Okay, folks, let's install our shower valance and turn this into this. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and unpack the shower valance and see what's in here. Looks like we've got shower valance itself and then two end caps. This looks pretty simple. So here's the tools we're going to need. Looks like a tape measure, scissors, pencil, and some sort of a box cutter or a knife. So the first thing we want to do is measure where the current shower rod is, assuming we like where it's at. So I'm going to write those measurements down from the top and from the back of the shower enclosure. Now I'm going to measure down to the center of that circle you see on the end cap there and use those measurements that we just took for where the old shower rod was. And then while holding it there, I'm going to go ahead and mark the top of the the end cap. And then I'm going to measure over again to the center of that circle and put it where that circle where it used to be, where the old shower rod was, and I'm going to mark the side of the end cap now. So the next thing to do is to peel the unpeel the self-stick tape on the back of the end cap and go ahead and install it. Now I'm doing this by eyeball as far as getting it vertically straight because I'm so close to the edge of the tile there it's fairly easy to see, but if you need to you could use a level there to make sure that you get it straight. Okay, now that I've installed it, I want to get a really precise location in case I was off a little bit. And I'm measuring now just to the top of the end cap and to the side of the end cap. And I'm going to write those numbers down. That's going to help me when I install the end cap on the other side, because I want to make sure that I get the same distance down and the same distance from the back of the shower enclosure. So I'm using those numbers and putting a mark on the top, and I'm going to go ahead and mark the side as well. And then we're going to go ahead and peel off the tape on this one and go ahead and install this one using those marks we just made. So now we've got those perfectly across from each other. So next we just want to reinstall our original tension rod. You want the ends of that to go right in the center of those rings that you see inside the end caps. So you might have to adjust it a little bit on each end. Make sure it's nice and tight in there. We don't want it to slip. So now what we need to do is measure the distance between those two end caps. And I mean all the way to the furthest apart that they can be. Not those edges that you see, but right to the back of those end caps. And as you can see, I'm using the tape measure inside to measure that. So you have to take into account that the tape measure itself usually has a width of like 3 inches. So you'll notice that I wrote down 55 1/8 inches, but my tape measure says add 3 inches on it. Now yours may be different, so you'll have to take that into account. So I'm going to want to cut it at 58 1/8. So I'm going to go ahead and make marks, 2 on each surface of the valance material here. And I'm right-handed, so it tends to work best for me to kind of do my work at the left-hand end of the shower valance itself. So now that I've got those marks made, I'm going to use a straight edge, and it's easier if you use something flexible here. I just used a piece of thin cardboard because the material is flexible and it's also curved on the top, so it's definitely a little hard to use a metal straight edge or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark all those lines. There we go. So now it's time to cut. So the easiest way to do this is to make a cut right down the top 2 corners from the end of the valance right to those lines we just made. And you want to be very careful not to go past the line you made. So you'll notice that I actually use two hands here when I get to the end. It's not because it's tougher, it's just that I don't want to accidentally go past the line, so I'm being very careful. So next, we want to go ahead and just start cutting on the line that we made. Now, depending on the strength of the scissors that you're using, you may be able to cut all the way up to that cut that we made first along the corner there. Since I'm using a scissors that isn't that great or that strong, I can only get to within about an inch of that, because otherwise I'm cutting way out on the ends of the scissors. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and I'll show you in a minute here how to deal with that last inch that you weren't able to cut. On this side, I'm able to get a little further, probably within maybe a half of an inch on this side. But not to worry, this is where the box cutter comes in. So again, use some sort of a straight edge, and you're going to want to just score the material, that little inch or half inch that we weren't able to cut. You don't have to cut deeply here, you just need to make a score. And you want to be careful when you do this not to injure yourself, obviously, and not to slip, because it is going to break where you made that score. So you want to be pretty careful with that. And you can see it just snaps right off. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Again, be careful not to cut yourself here. And I use my fingers on the back side as kind of a support when I'm pushing on this to kind of get it to break along that score. And it snaps right off. So now, since I'm right-handed, I turn the valance back around, because it seems that a right-handed scissors works best when you're working on the left end of the valance here. So that's what I'm doing. If you're left-handed and have a left-handed scissors, it might work better for you to work at the other end. So there we have it. I've got the valance material cut to length, and now if I did my work right, it just slides right into place. Isn't that nice? Much nicer looking than what we had before, and it works too. You can slide the curtain back and forth. Now, as an optional step, you can paint the shower valance. Just make sure you buy some spray paint that is specifically made for plastic. That's important. And clean the shower valance, make sure it's not oily, and you might even want to sand it with some very fine sandpaper before you paint it. Another option would be to cover it with something like wallpaper or a wallpaper border, as you see here. Nothing left to do now but sit back and enjoy your shower valance.